When I first heard those words echo in my mind, they didn't sound real. They sounded like something that could only happen in a movie, one of those slow, painful dramas where everyone walks away broken. But this wasn't a movie. It was my life. And it all began the day I overheard two voices whispering in my kitchen, voices I trusted with every piece of my heart. For most of my adult life, I'd believed in ordinary goodness. That if you loved people deeply, they would love you back. That honesty and kindness were things you could build a life on. For years, I did just that, with my husband, Daniel, and my best friend, Melissa. Melissa and I met when we were 21, working at a local cafe during college. She had this contagious laugh, the kind that could soften even the grumpiest customer. We became inseparable, roommates first, then sisters by choice. When I got married, she stood beside me in a pale lavender dress, tears glistening on her cheeks. She said she'd never seen anyone look at a woman the way Daniel looked at me. Back then, I believed her. Daniel was charming in a quiet way. He wasn't the kind of man who filled a room, he filled a silence. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, people listened. He was steady, practical, kind. The sort of man you could build a home with. And we did. We bought a small house in the suburbs, white walls, creaky floors, a little garden that never quite grew straight. Our daughter, Emma, came along 5 years later. Life became a rhythm of school lunches, coffee dates with Melissa, and evenings when Daniel would read on the couch while I planned the next day's meals. Melissa had a daughter, too, Lily. She was 10 years younger than Emma, a quiet little girl with Daniel's calm eyes and my husband's dimpled smile. I always thought it was funny. I'd tease Daniel about how Lily could have been ours. He'd laugh softly, say, maybe she just has good taste in genetics. I never thought anything of it. Because why would I? Melissa was my best friend. My sister. Lily called me Aunt Grace. And I adored that child like my own. When Lily turned 16, she started coming over more often. She'd babysit for Emma's kids, help me plant flowers, sit in the kitchen with a cup of tea while telling me about her latest heartbreak. She reminded me so much of Melissa at that age, restless, romantic, always searching for something she couldn't name. One evening, as she sat across from me at the table, I remember telling her, "You know, sweetheart, you don't need to rush life. The right things, they come when they're meant to." She smiled that soft, almost shy smile and said, "You sound just like Mom." That made me laugh. Then maybe she and I did something right after all. If someone had told me then that the very bond I'd cherished, between me, Melissa, and Daniel, was built on a secret that would shatter everything I loved, I would have laughed in disbelief. The day it all began unraveling was a Sunday. The kind of day that starts slow and quiet, sunlight pooling through the curtains, coffee brewing, birds fussing outside the window. Melissa and Lily had come over for lunch. Emma was out with her husband, and Daniel was supposed to be working in his study. We'd made lasagna, the same way we had every other Sunday for 20 years. After lunch, Melissa said she was going to lie down for a bit, she'd been feeling tired. Lily stayed behind, washing dishes with me while Daniel disappeared upstairs. I remember it clearly, the sound of plates clinking, water running, the faint creak of footsteps overhead. Then the soft hum of voices. A man's and a woman's. At first, I thought Daniel was on the phone. But something in the tone. Low, intimate, too careful. It was the sound of someone trying not to be heard. I turned off the faucet, heart thudding. For a second, I thought maybe I was imagining it. I had to be. Why would Daniel be whispering to Lily? Still, my feet carried me toward the hallway before I could think twice. The air upstairs felt heavier somehow, as if it was holding its breath with me. Their voices grew clearer, fragments of sentences, a nervous laugh, the sound of someone exhaling. Then, through the small crack of the study door, I heard Lily's voice tremble. I hate pretending. I hate that she doesn't know. And Daniel, my husband, the man I'd trusted for half my life, said quietly. Lily, we agreed. It's better this way. She doesn't need to know. My hand froze on the doorframe. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world went soundless, like everything had been sucked into a vacuum. Then Lily whispered, barely audible. But she's my godmother. And Daniel replied. She's also my wife. It took every ounce of strength not to collapse right there. The room tilted. My pulse thundered in my ears. The floor beneath me felt unreal. I backed away slowly, my mind screaming for a different explanation. Something, anything, that made sense. But when I saw their faces as the door opened, Lily's eyes wide, Daniel's pale and speechless, I knew. The truth stood between us, silent and merciless. Grace, Daniel began, his voice cracking. But I couldn't speak. I couldn't even move. Lily stammered, it's not, I didn't mean. I walked past them, my body moving like it belonged to someone else. Down the stairs. Through the kitchen. Out into the garden where the lasagna still sat cooling on the counter like nothing had happened. The air smelled of tomato and rosemary. The sky was too blue, too calm for the storm inside me. When Melissa called from upstairs, her voice carefree, unaware, I felt something inside me break clean in two. Because now, every memory, every shared meal, every laugh, every moment was stained with betrayal I hadn't even known I was living inside. That night, I sat on the porch alone. Daniel tried knocking on the bedroom door for hours. He said he could explain. That it happened long before me and him were married. That he didn't even know Lily was his until a few years ago. But every word felt like a blade twisting deeper. Because if that was true, then he'd been lying, not for months, but decades. And the worst part? Melissa knew. I could see it in the way she avoided my eyes the next morning. Melissa came into the kitchen that morning as if nothing had happened. She wore her usual soft pink sweater, her hair still damp from a shower, humming a tune like the world hadn't just collapsed. I sat there at the table, staring at my untouched coffee. The air between us felt so thick you could slice it with a knife. Morning, she said lightly, reaching for the kettle. I didn't answer. When she finally turned around, her smile faltered. Her eyes darted to mine, searching, calculating, and in that instant, I knew she could see it. I knew. Her hand froze midair. Grace, she said softly. What's wrong? It took me a long time to speak. My voice came out quiet, but it shook with everything I was holding back. How long have you known? Her face drained of color. She didn't even ask what I meant. That silence, that heavy, shameful silence, told me everything. Grace, she began, her voice cracking. Please. Let me explain. No, I said, standing. Don't explain. Just tell me. Did you know that Lily is Daniel's daughter? Her lip trembled. Yes. That one word, that tiny, fragile word, cracked the entire foundation of 20 years of friendship. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to hurt you. It was before you and Daniel ever started dating. I found out when I was pregnant. He didn't know, Grace. I swear, he didn't. I stared at her, trying to find something in her face that I could still recognize. The friend who held my hand through childbirth, who helped me bury my mother, who knew every secret of my life. You had decades to tell me, I whispered. You watched me marry him. You stood beside me, smiling, knowing the man I loved had fathered your child. And you said nothing. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I wanted to tell you so many times, but then you were happy. You built this beautiful life. I didn't want to ruin it. I thought it would only hurt you. I shook my head. No, Melissa. You didn't want to ruin your life. You didn't want people to know what you did. She took a step closer, desperate now. Grace, please. Don't. I raised my hand. Don't come any closer. Just go. She looked at me, eyes wide, pleading, but I couldn't look at her any longer. The woman I'd trusted with everything had stolen something from me that couldn't be replaced, the truth. When the door closed behind her, I sank to the floor. I don't know how long I stayed there, minutes, hours, my head resting against the cabinet, my breath coming in shallow bursts. All those years. The vacations we took together, the Christmas cards, the shared laughter, it all rewrote itself in my mind, each memory turning bitter, like sweet fruit gone bad. And Lily. My sweet goddaughter. She had no idea what kind of storm she'd been born into. Daniel didn't go to work that day. He stayed in the living room, silent, waiting for me to speak. By afternoon, I finally sat across from him. He looked exhausted, pale, unshaven, broken in a way I'd never seen before. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I didn't know, Grace. I swear on everything I have. When Melissa and I were in college, we had a brief moment. We weren't together, not even serious. It was one mistake. Then she left town, and I never saw her again. Years later, she came back, with Lily, but she never told me the truth. Not until, he swallowed. Not until Lily turned 10. 10. I repeated, my throat burning. You've known for 16 years and didn't tell me? His head dropped into his hands. I didn't know how. I was terrified. You loved Melissa like a sister. You loved Lily. I thought if I told you, I'd lose everything. I stared at him, anger bubbling up beneath the heartbreak. So instead, you let me live a lie? He looked up, tears in his eyes. Yes. And I hate myself for it every day. I wish I could say that hearing his guilt made it easier, but it didn't. It just made it heavier, like grief layered over betrayal. Because part of me believed him. And that made it worse. I could forgive a mistake made before we met. But I couldn't forgive a secret kept for half my life. That night, I slept in the guest room. He didn't try to follow me. In the dark, I stared at the ceiling and replayed everything in my mind, the laughter, the dinners, the nights Melissa and I sat gossiping while Daniel poured wine. It was like watching ghosts move through my house. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The next day, I called Lily. She answered, her voice shaky, like she'd been crying for hours. Hi, sweetheart, I said softly. Can you come over? I think we need to talk. There was a long pause before she whispered, I'm so sorry, Aunt Grace. I know, I said quietly. Just come. When she arrived, she looked like a shadow of herself, eyes red, hands trembling. She didn't even sit down before the tears came. I didn't mean to hurt you, she sobbed. I only found out a year ago. Mom told me. I wanted to tell you, but she begged me not to. She said it would destroy everything. I walked over and took her hands. Her fingers were cold. Lily, I said softly, none of this is your fault. She looked up at me through tears. But you must hate me. Hate you? I shook my head. No, baby. You didn't choose this. The people who should have protected you, and me, made choices we didn't deserve. Her shoulders trembled as I pulled her into a hug. She cried against my chest, whispering, I wish you were my real mom. And that broke me all over again. Because for years, she was mine in every way that mattered, except blood. That night, Daniel packed a bag. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said, quietly, I'll give you space. You deserve that much. As the door shut behind him, the house finally went silent. No footsteps. No laughter. No voices that sounded too familiar. Just the echo of everything I'd lost. And in that silence, I realized something. I'd spent years building a life around trust, and now that it was gone, I didn't even know who I was without it. But maybe Maybe that was where healing had to start. The first few weeks after Daniel left were the hardest. The silence in the house was unbearable, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, suffocating kind that made you hear every creak, every whisper of regret. I went through the motions, work, chores, small talk, but nothing felt real. The neighbors smiled politely, unaware that my world had cracked in half. Even the air in the kitchen smelled different without his morning coffee brewing. Sometimes, I'd catch myself setting out 2 plates for dinner. Old habits die quietly. Melissa stopped calling. Lily texted now and then, simple things. Are you okay? Or, I miss you. I always replied, but never with more than a few words. I wasn't ready to open those wounds again. One evening, about a month later, I found an old photo album buried in the back of a drawer. It was from our college days, me, Melissa, Daniel, all smiles and bad haircuts, before the weight of life had settled on our shoulders. We looked happy. We were happy. Back then, we had no idea how tangled our lives would become. No one ever imagines betrayal sitting right beside them in the photo. I stared at a picture of the 3 of us, arms around each other, laughing. I ran my fingers over it, and that's when the tears came. But this time, they weren't angry. They were tired. Tired of carrying the pain, the resentment, the endless replaying of, what if? Because the truth was, no amount of hate could undo what had already been done. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Melissa. She didn't answer the first time. Or the second. But on the 3rd call, she picked up. Her voice was small. Grace? Can we talk? I asked quietly. There was a long pause before she said, yes. Please. We met at the same cafe where we'd shared countless breakfasts over the years, the one with the chipped mugs and cinnamon coffee we both loved. Only this time, it felt like walking through the ashes of something that used to be beautiful. She looked nervous, her eyes puffy like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me, she tried to smile, but it trembled halfway up her face. Thank you for coming, she said. I nodded, taking a seat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clatter of cups and quiet chatter around us filled the space where our laughter used to live. Finally, she whispered, I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm sorry. Not just for what happened, but for how long I let it go on. Her words cracked something inside me, not anger this time, but grief. You should have trusted me, I said softly. We could have faced it together. You took that from me. Tears welled up in her eyes. I know. I was a coward. Every time I saw you smile, I told myself it was better this way. That if you didn't know, you wouldn't hurt. But that was selfish. I see that now. I looked at her for a long time. I thought about the friendship that had shaped my life, the birthdays, the hospital visits, the countless moments we'd shared. One truth had burned it all down. But beneath the ashes, there was still something, maybe not friendship, not yet, but humanity. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said honestly. But I don't want to hate you anymore. Her lip quivered. That's more than I deserve. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing, just 2 broken women trying to breathe in the wreckage of their choices. After that day, things changed, quietly, slowly. I didn't rush forgiveness, but I didn't chase revenge either. Daniel and I spoke occasionally, about bills, the house, practical things. He was staying in a small apartment downtown. Sometimes his voice cracked when he asked how I was. Sometimes mine did too. We were 2 ghosts haunting the memory of a marriage. Months passed. Spring turned to summer, and the world outside kept moving, even when mine had stopped. One afternoon, I went to the park near the lake, the same one where Daniel used to take Lily fishing when she was little. I sat on a bench, watching families laugh, kids run through sprinklers, and couples hold hands. That's when I saw Lily walking toward me, holding 2 coffees. She smiled shyly. I thought you might be here. I couldn't help but smile back. You remembered. She handed me the cup and sat beside me. For a while, we just watched the water. Finally, she said, Mom's been seeing a therapist. She's trying to make things right. I hope she does, I said quietly. Then she looked at me, eyes wide with something raw. Do you think I'll ever be part of your life again? I reached over and took her hand. Lily, you never stopped being part of my life. I may not be your mother by blood, but I love you just the same. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. In that moment, I realized forgiveness didn't always need words. Sometimes it lived quietly in the choice to stay kind when you could turn cold. By fall, I'd started volunteering at a local youth center, helping girls rebuild confidence after broken homes and betrayals. It was healing in a way I didn't expect. Every story I heard reminded me that pain doesn't have to define you, it can refine you. And maybe that was my redemption. One evening, as I was closing up, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. I heard you've been helping those girls. I'm proud of you, Grace. Truly. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I'm learning to let go. A few minutes later, he sent back just 2 words. So am I. It's been a year now. The pain doesn't vanish, it just learns to live quietly in the corners of your heart. Melissa and I aren't friends the way we were, but we speak sometimes. There's a gentleness now, a mutual understanding that we both broke something precious, and some things can't be repaired, only respected. Lily visits often. She calls me Aunt Grace again, but sometimes, in her softer moments, she slips, she says, Mom. And I never correct her. Because deep down, I think we both know. Love doesn't always follow the rules of blood or betrayal. Sometimes, it just stays. They say forgiveness is for the other person. But that's not true. Forgiveness is the moment you stop letting someone else's choices define your peace. I thought my story ended with betrayal. But now I see, it was only the beginning of becoming who I was always meant to be.